Now let's welcome in the former Lieutenant Governor of New York Post columnist and Newsmax contributor Betsy McCoy, best-selling author and political analyst Mark Halperin, and former National Press Secretary for the Trump campaign and Press Secretary at the White House, Hogan Gidley. So starting with Shinzo Abe, Hogan, you mentioned former President Trump's relationship with Abe. Can you elaborate a bit on that? I know you said they were great friends and colleagues.
They were great friends and colleagues. They understood that their countries needed to work together to make them better on the global stage, no question about it. It was always kind of comforting for me as a staffer to be in the room when Prime Minister Abe would enter, because I knew the president had someone in there he could trust, that he could talk to. They didn't always agree on everything. That's not the nature of their relationship, but Prime Minister Abe had been down to Mar-a-Lago several times. I played golf with the Prime Minister out here in Sterling, Virginia, just near the D.C. area at Trump's course, too, with the president. And they had just such a great joking relationship on the golf course. But they also understood the business of their offices. I mean, when we had a trade deal fall through with China over in Biarritz, France, Donald Trump asked for Prime Minister Abe first, said, bring him in the room. Let's figure this whole thing out. And they got together, they worked on it. And sure enough, they had an impromptu press conference with members of the international press, including obviously the American press pool, and talked about this historic trade deal between our two nations. They had a good friendship, but they also had a good partnership from a professional level as well.
All right. Of course, we're remembering, just recently assassinated former Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe, who is described as a very good friend of the United States. We'll be bringing you more on that. But I want to pivot here, Mark. President Biden's upcoming trip to the Middle East is hitting turbulence before Air Force One even leaves the runway. The president will be visiting Israel and also Saudi Arabia, where he will have what could be a little bit of an awkward meeting with the Saudi prince, whom he once called a pariah. Now, we know this trip is largely driven by our domestic oil and gas woes. So, Mark, is this the right move by President Biden politically, and how will this trip play with the American people?
It's going to be a complicated trip. I was surprised that they went through with it, and the way you've listened to the president and people in his administration talk about the relationship with the Saudis, they've kind of sent mixed signals. So I'd be surprised if this trip ended up being particularly successful. It's not clear to me what agenda there is that could actually help the U.S. In terms of energy prices, but this is, in theory, Joe Biden's area of expertise and specialty. And so I hope he comes back with more than it appears at this point that he will.
Betsy, to you, what are you expecting from Biden's trip?
Not much, except cynicism, or skepticism is a better word, skepticism on the part of the American public. Most Americans realize the way to increase the supply and bring down the price of petroleum products in the United States is to drill more. And the government has to send a positive message and incentive to oil producers and oil refiners, rather than sending them the message that the U.S. government wants to put them all out of business. There's no point in employing people in the oil industry in Saudi Arabia and laying off people in the United States.
Yeah, a great point on there. And again, Hogan, we're continuing with what President Biden is sort of doing as we come to the end of the week today. He's expected to take executive action on abortion access to protect access to reproductive health services. He's trying to shut down individual states' efforts to limit a woman's ability to go across state lines for a legal abortion or get federally approved medication. What's your take on this, and do you think this is going to be helpful to Democrats in November?
I don't think it's going to be particularly helpful, because the polling issue of abortion still polls around 3%. I think the climate change agenda is somewhere around 1%. Still, a majority of the people are focused on exactly what Mark and Betsy were talking about, which is inflation, which is gas prices. The cost of living in this country has skyrocketed under Joe Biden. And at the outset of his administration, he bragged about doing everything differently than Donald Trump, 180-degree turns. Go back and look at some of the ads that have been put out by the RNC, for example, of showing Biden saying, we will get rid of fossil fuels. You mark my words, we're not going to have any more drilling, no more fracking under my administration. We'll go all to renewable energy resources. And so now for him to look around and say, wait, I don't know how to fix this, I don't know how to bring down prices, it's not true. All you have to do is go back to the policies that made us energy independent, that allowed us to be the net exporter of energy in this world. He won't do that because he's beholden to the left. And now this trip over to the Middle East is going to be even more embarrassing because he's pushed our allies in the region into the hands of Russia and to China because he refuses to acknowledge that Iran is a terrorist state and wants to enter into a deal with them. And so now, after calling them a pariah in the Middle East and other things, he's going over there hat in hand to beg them for more oil and more energy. Not going to do much for folks here at home because, as Betsy pointed out, you can fix it if we just drill here in America.
Yeah, Betsy, speaking of oil and gas and energy, your most recent column for the New York Post was about how the Supreme Court struck down an Environmental Protection Agency plan compelling states to shutter coal plants and shift to low-carbon alternatives like natural gas and wind. Why do you say our highest court didn't rule for pollution, but it ruled for democracy?
That's right. The justices in the Supreme Court didn't vote in favor of coal plants or in favor of pollution. What they said is that the EPA, an unelected bureaucracy, should not exceed the powers granted by Congress and tell states that they have to close down coal plants and shift to other means of generating electricity like natural gas or wind or solar. That is such a critical decision with such enormous impact on the American public that it doesn't belong in the hands of a few unelected bureaucrats. The Supreme Court voted for democracy. Let the public decide in Congress or in their state legislatures how fast and at what cost Americans want to move away from fossil fuels. And I want to tell you that the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission just put out a report warning that, in fact, some states are moving so quickly away from coal without enough alternative resources that when heat waves hit this summer, electric prices will go up as much as 233%. Wow. Get ready for your next electric bill.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.